Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Angela Pugh. Thank you for spending some time with me today listening to the pod. I think you're going to love the episode we have coming up. I have a very special guest, author, podcaster, speaker, extraordinaire. Mark Crandall is joining us today, and I'm going to let him take a minute and introduce himself. Mark, welcome to the pod. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. What do you want me to say to introduce myself?
Well, tell everybody better than I did what you do and why you do it.
Hey, everybody. Before we get into that, go follow Angela on Instagram.
At Addiction Unlimited.
I really enjoy her content. I like her photos daily. So I guess my life I'll give you a brief rundown. My life started in August 23rd, 2007. That's when I was released from prison. And then my life really started 4 years ago when I moved to Austin, Texas. And what I mean my life really started is I learned about entrepreneurship and started to fulfill and create things that I'd been talking about doing for years in active addiction, such as writing a book and speaking on stage. And what I was finding was I wasn't surrounding myself with individuals that were, living outside the box, if you will. I was trying to think of a PC way to say it, but like everyone that I was surrounding myself with, they were working 9-to-5s and they were just kind of going with the flow of life. And I had something inside of me that just wanted to go do things that other people weren't doing and create things that people told me I couldn't, or that my own mind told me that I couldn't. So that's what I am, and that's why my brand is Purpose Chasers. You can follow me on Instagram as well.
I love that, Purpose Chasers. Have you heard that thing? I think it was Lori Grenier from Shark Tank was the first time I heard it. And she said, entrepreneurs, she said, we're the only people that will work 90 hours a week to avoid working 40.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like the entrepreneurial joke is, what day is it? Right? Because like I work Saturday, I work
Always,
Sunday.
Yeah.
And with the addiction side of me, if you will, I would be classified as a workaholic.
For sure.
And, it's something that, my wife and I have openly discussed. And I've recently had to start saying no to some things, right? Because this, and I know this from, for those of you listening, Angela and I met today. Mm-hmm. We talked online a little bit in, an intro that was made for us, but instantly clicked. And now she's in my hotel room. She did try to vet me through text message, but we are now in the hotel room recording, and we'd been talking for 2 hours before we hit record. But I was surrounding myself with people like you that were so focused on impact and just empowering people to go beyond what they wanted to do, that like sometimes I don't sleep at night. I get so fired up with just like moving the needle for somebody else's life.
Totally.
That I don't sleep. And my wife says it's a problem.
I know, right? Like I literally had some conversation like this with my family too, where I had to. This is so funny. I talked about this on the episode with Russ Perry, Sober Entrepreneur, and we talked about some of this a little bit, where I caught myself literally not wanting to go hang out and spend time with my family. I'm super close with my family, my mom and my dad for sure. And I have nieces and nephews and brothers, and I just love all of them. But I was shying away from spending so much time with them because I wanted to work. Or like if we're together, I'm the person that will always take the call, or that will always if there's a lull in conversation, I'm going to be on my social media. Like it's just work, 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 work. And instead of upsetting people or being offensive and being on the phone at dinner or whatever, I would just kind of isolate more so I could work, because it's what I love. Because my work doesn't feel like work.
It's not work,
it's
right?
Not work.
It's not.
Yeah.
To me, it's not work. It's just not.
It's
not
joy. Like when people say, oh, you're going out of town. Is it business or pleasure? I'm like, isn't that the same?
Totally.
Okay. What I do want to ask you about is I want to ask you about prison. Not in a way.
Great transition, Angela.
Not in a way of like, how was it there? Because I think we all kind of have our own picture. But what were you there for? And how did it change you?
I was there for burglary. I had 4 burglary charges, a couple criminal trespassing. I was addicted to heroin, Jägermeister, benzos at the time, pretty much anything that would shut my mind off. And it was the umpteenth time this specific judge had seen me in court. And the last time I'd ever seen him, he said, the next time I see you, you're going to prison. And, I guess I was out to call his bluff. And he sent me there, and I'm really a product of a good intervention. Like my mom had some people in her ears. My bail was $500,
and she didn't go get
nope.
you. Oh, God bless her. I love her.
And I went to prison for 2 years, and I'm so grateful because it's horrible. It's not like you see on TV, right? It's boring. You're trapped inside of your own thoughts. And for somebody who's suffering to the extent that I was internally, it was a horrible place. But at the same time, I hit bottom in prison.
Okay, so that's kind of why I asked that question, because I knew this guy in LA years ago. He, a dear friend of mine, God rest his soul, wrote a book many years ago called Moments of Clarity. Christopher Kennedy Lawford. And it was a series of short stories of people and what their kind of moment of clarity was. What was that real rock bottom moment? And this guy was in the book, and I got to hear him speak at an AA meeting when I was in LA. And he talked about he was sentenced to 17 years for drug trafficking. And he said he did everything in prison that he did outside of prison, right? He was doing drugs and he goes, you can do anything you want in prison except drive a car. Mm-hmm. And he said he was in solitary confinement, I think, at 16 years into his sentence. And he said his moment of clarity was realizing that he was doing the same exact thing as he was doing 16 years before. And that was his rock bottom moment, right? It wasn't all the insanity in the outside world, but it was being in there, trapped with his thoughts, and where he really was like, holy shit, I got to make some changes,
Yeah, and it was the same situation for me. I was like 2 weeks. I was quartered. So not only was I quartered to 2 years of prison, I was also court ordered to a 12 to 18 month therapeutic community upon leaving. To a treatment facility. I don't know if there are any of these in the country. I'm not aware of them. It's the greatest thing to ever happen. I got in trouble. You were outside cutting grass with scissors and a ruler. Like, it was brutal, but I needed it. And so I'm like 2 weeks away from going to this treatment facility, being released. And I woke up one morning and I went to med call, and we were sniffing antidepressants and all kinds of stuff in there. And I got up to go, here's a little fun fact for your audience. I taught myself how to catch pills in my throat and spit them back up so I would never get caught cheeking my meds. And
good for you.
Yeah.
Can you do that in a talent show?
I can still do it, I'm sure. I think it's like riding a bike. I'm not sure though. And so I was like, I just woke up this morning, that morning, and I was mortified. And I just remember having this, I didn't have a lot of moments of clarity, if you will, but I remember having this moment of what in the hell are you doing? What are you doing? You're about to be released back out into the world. You've spent your and I didn't have this insight, but you've spent your whole life trying to not be like your biological parents. And here you are worse off than them. What are you doing? That thought, I pondered it. I didn't cheek. I actually took my medication that day. I didn't even cheek it or swallow it or catch it in my throat, whatever. And I remember I was walking to the hall to get breakfast with all the other inmates, and I'm in my head, which was normal. I'm in my head all the time, right? Even sober. And I'm walking there, and I had this thought, and this thought was, I believe it was God, divine intervention, universe, whatever y'all believe in. And this thought was, go to the one place in the library that you've never been, like clear as day. And I read nonstop in prison. I read, I wrote, I played Skip-Bo and cribbage. That was pretty much my life. That's literally all.
No spades.
Oh, I wasn't that good at spades, and they got serious.
Yes.
About it. So
I was a very serious spades player.
Yeah, if you screwed up the books, I just didn't. I wasn't good. So I was good at cribbage, and so I went to breakfast. I had no idea what it meant. I was contemplating it the whole time I was eating my crappy toast and hard-boiled eggs. And we get back to the unit, and I'm like, what is this one place? I'm like mopping the floor, getting ready for the yard to open up. And I was in the library almost every day. As often as I could get in the library, I was there with my head in a book because reading took me out of what was actually going on.
Out of reality.
And so I walk in the library, and I'm staring around the library. So the guard's like probably looking at me like, this kid, he's about to pull a move. Like, what's he going to do? I'm going to jack him up. And I remember I walk into the library. I'm like, where have I never been? Where have I never been? I'm like following this thought. And I thought I was crazy. I'm like, dude, you're nuts. Like, this doesn't mean anything. So I go, what do you think the one place in the library I found out I had never been was?
The business section.
No, that would be cool though. No, it was the spirituality self-help section.
Oh.
I had never been there. No one. The only time inmates went
It's
there.
like all the books were brand new because nobody had ever opened them.
They were, and there wasn't a camera back there. So that's where they would pass all the narcotics and they would do all their deals was in self-help. So that's why.
It was a multi-purpose section.
Totally. I mean, it was very godly. And so I walked back there and I was like, okay, so now what? And there was one book on display, as libraries have. And I remember looking at it, and this man who was on the cover had the biggest smile I've ever seen on his face. And he was in it was an orange and red robe. And I picked it up. It was a book by the Dalai Lama. And I went back to my unit and I read half of it that day. That night, after taking my sleeping meds, I wrapped a towel around my head to practice this meditation that he taught in the book. I later nodded out. But for the remaining 2 weeks, I was referred to as the Buddha, which I thought was an insult, and actually almost fought over it. Come to find out, like, it's, it was really
kind of cool.
It was a kind of cool thing to be called. So that was it for me. That was the moment of kind of seeking. There was another moment, which I'll speed this one up. I'm 11 months into the treatment center. I'm contemplating ending my life on a daily basis. I'm not getting better. We're all told to stay away from this group that was bringing a commitment into our treatment center. They did it every Thursday. We were all told to stay away from them by the other AAs in the community because they were a cult and they were crazy. And I remember I was stealing cookies out back one night, and I'm like, literally at the point where, like, I'm gonna tie a noose and throw it around a tree out back. Like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like, I can't sleep at night. I'm thinking about ending my life. Because I'm obsessing about drinking. I'm obsessing about getting high. I'm engaged in criminal activity and treatment. Right. And so this next thought that came to me was go to this meeting. And then I was like, okay. And so I'm trying to justify. I'm like, there's 2 pots of coffee that go down there. No one attends it. I could get caffeine wasted tonight, right? And like, for whatever, go back to my room and like, yeah, I'm in rehab.
Tweak on caffeine.
Yeah, I'm in rehab. But whatever, I'm looking for a fix. And I went to that meeting that night, and this man, Rob, spoke, and he, they always say, I hate that line, but they always say, find somebody who has what you want. And I never understood what that meant. And I don't think most people do.
No.
And I didn't get it because I didn't want a house. I didn't want a car. I was just really convinced that anything that I acquired in life, I was going to burn down. That was my experience. But I went to this meeting and Rob spoke, and he said, my name's Rob. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I have a wife that I've never hit, a dog that I feed twice a day, a house that the mortgage is paid for 3 months in advance, a car that's registered and inspected. And when cops pull up behind me, I don't look under my seat. And I was like,
whoa,
holy shit.
That's my guy.
I was like, I just found out if you don't brush your teeth, you're going to have cavities and really expensive dentist bills if you want to keep your teeth. Like, hold the boat, dude. I can't even make my bed. And so I asked that man to sponsor me, and he provided me some of the best mentorship that I've received, in my 12 plus years on this little journey.
Isn't that crazy? I feel that way about my sponsor as well. I've had the same sponsor. He's my unofficial sponsor now. He was my official sponsor for 10 years. He's still my go-to person. He's still the only person I want to go to talk about things. But I often think in business, and you and I were talking about this before we were recording, like having our own coaches and things like that. And in business, I often think like, gosh, I wish I could find that mentor that I had that connection with, like I had with my sponsor. And I hear myself all the time, even on the podcast saying, well, my sponsor taught me, or I was taught to do it like this. And it was all him, you know. I wish I could find that sort of person again. With that kind of guidance that just, I mean, he was life-changing. He really was. And he was just the right person that communicated with me in the right way, that was non-threatening in the right way. You know what I mean? It was just the perfect fit.
Totally. And Rob was a hippie who had a ponytail and Birkenstocks. And I was, you know, at the time believed I was some Aryan savior of the earth, and I was 230 pounds and I did nothing but push-ups all day. So I was like, if this dude acts up, I'm going to snap him. Right. But he hit me with some of the most aggressive truth that I've ever received. And that was it was from that moment that I just started chasing it. He brought me through the 12 steps. Very early on in my recovery, I would say 2 years, I picked up a book, which we were talking about, you know, before this interview started. I picked up a book, Awaken the Giant Within, and I read that, and I literally, we could do a whole episode on, or 6 episodes probably, on all the transformational workshops and all of the weird stuff that I've done. Like the more cult-like society views something, I've done it, like workshops, coaches. I've become obsessed with personal development, if you will.
Me too. Totally. I love it. One of my girlfriends looked at me a while back and she's like, God, it's like you're always on, you know, because I'm just always in something, working on something, wanting to change something or learn something. I mean, it's crazy, but I love it because I never thought, like, when I was drunk, I thought I was just a huge piece of shit and I was just going to die a drunk piece of shit. Like, that's the truth. So when I got sober and I started seeing myself become a good human being, I was so enamored because I didn't even think I was capable of being a good person. And that kind of became my addiction. I was like, wow, if I can change like this, if I can grow and I can become this person, like anybody can do it. Really, anybody can. So the next thing I want to know is, when you were coming out of prison, like now you have this record, right? Which a lot of people end up in this position. Many of us in addiction have a criminal record, not uncommon. And I face this a lot with guys in my sober living houses, right? That they have challenges, they have a record, it's hard to get jobs. So what was your thought process in that time when you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get it together, I'm going to get sober, but I have these barriers because of my past? Like, how did you approach it? What was your thought process?
It's been a process and still crops up. You know, I'm a convict. Like I would say I have convictions on my record. I'm not a convict. There are two different distinctions. So having convictions on your record means you have convictions on your record. Being a convict means you're living like a convict.
Right.
And it's funny that you should ask this because it's literally like one of the most powerful moments of my life. And I wonder if you knew this going into it or if she's shaking her head no. So she didn't. So I
just met you like 5 hours ago.
I know we spent 2 of them together. It's weird. I was painting and drywalling because in my mind, that's all I was ever going to be able to do. And, you know, I'm a good painter. I still to this day. I mean, I do all of this stuff on our houses. Actually, this last time I hired somebody to paint my house and just ain't nobody got time for that. And so I was doing this work and I hated it. I mean, I'm working with people that are addicted. You know, I'm working in the job environment of everyone's replaceable. And no one wants to work in that environment of like every day wondering if today's the day. And I'm doing this work and I'd also been guided through meditation to go to college. And so I was going online because I didn't want to be face to face with anyone and have anyone find out that, you know, I'm really stupid. I dropped out of high school and, you know,
Was it your first stint in college, or had you done some college before?
No.
First stint.
I got my GED in prison. That was my education up to this point. They forced me to get my GED, or I probably still wouldn't have it in order to parole out. And anyone that's in prison wants to get out.
Right.
So most people.
Most people, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's another myth. I can't, I only have a GED. I can't go to college. College will take anyone. And there was another misconception that you can't get student loans if you have felonies. That's not true.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, you can't get student loans if you've been convicted of felony drug charges while receiving student loans. So a lot of it is misconceptions that are out there, and so I'm just an answer finder. Right. So I'll Google we live in a time where you can find anything out. So I'll Google, I'll call people. Hey, is this a thing? I've consulted lawyers. But anyways, I'm painting and drywalling. I'm like halfway through my bachelor's degree in human services. I'm getting a 4.0. Turns out I'm like really pretty academically intelligent anyways. Maybe not socially sometimes, but I'm academically intelligent. So and my mentor at the time said, hey, it's time for you to go to a face-to-face school. You've proved. And so I did. And, I was, like I said, I was obsessed with personal development. Somebody along the way and whatever I was reading or watching was talking about mentorship. And like how to utilize a mentor and how mentors, you bring them value, they bring you value to bring you to the next level. You and I were just discussing that. Neither of us are going to stop. Like I'm never going to retire. I just love what I do. And so I went to school the next weekend and I was like, mentor, who's going to be my mentor? Who's going to be my mentor? Well, there's a man there who is the director of a youth facility. And I have a sordid childhood as well. I was taken by DCYF at the age of 3. My mom kidnapped me. I was handcuffed, locked in a closet, burned with cigarettes. Like all the foundation to play the victim throughout my life, I had it. And I did a good job of it for a while. So I was like, I'm going to ask this man. How do I ask this man? What do I even say? I walked up to him and said, hey, Marty, he was my professor. I'm like, hey, will you mentor me? He goes, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know. Can I buy you lunch? He's like, yes. He's like, well, what are you seeking? I was like, I want to break into the field, but I have all these convictions on my record. Like, da-da-da-da-da. He's like, I can get you an interview. Gets me an interview. It's for a facility called Child and Family Services. They rebranded and renamed. I forget what it's called now. In New Hampshire. She interviews me, I nail it. Second interview, one of the youth in the Runaway and Homeless Youth Drop-In Center in which I was going to be working interviewed me. I ended up flipping the interview and interviewing him, and I got the job. That didn't change me, so stay with me. That's not when it all shifted for me. I worked there. I get bored easy. Once I master something, I need something else, and I will master it. I don't care what it is. I will figure it out. I'll become the best at it, whether it's marketing or, I'm in a new venture right now, right? And so
we are like the same person.
Yeah, we're serial entrepreneurs. Like I just want to figure it out. But some stuff like doing what you did on Instagram, like I just could never, I don't have the thumb power for that.
It's stubbornness.
Yeah.
That's what it is, really.
I don't have time for that. But so I'm bored at this job and I moved up the ranks. I'm at the top. Now I'm the Runaway and Homeless Youth social worker. So I'm providing in-home therapy for quartered youth and their families. I love what I do, but I'm bored. And a job opened up and it was at the Youth Detention Center, which was a state position. My mentor, everyone around me said, you're never going to get that job. Like, you're just not, Mark. Let's face facts. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I've already told myself that I can't get it. You've already told me that I can't get it. Let's try. We already know the worst case scenario, right? I don't get it. They're not going to arrest me for applying. So I applied, got an interview, nailed the interview, got a second interview, got hired. I worked there for about 6 months. The Union Leader, which is like this gossip paper in New Hampshire, but it's like the main newspaper, reached out. They wanted to interview me. Somebody had reported to them that a convict was hired by the facility, and it's unheard of in the state of New Hampshire. It's a very safe state, if you will. Sure. Very clean cut. They try to be anyways.
You're talking to somebody from Kansas, by the way.
Kansas. All I think about is the Wizard of Oz every time you say that.
So does the rest of the country.
And so They reach out. The director of the facility says, no, absolutely not. You cannot interview with them. No, we back you. We believe in you. My mentor, who was still my mentor, who got me the first job and gave me a reference at the second job, said, hey, I've gone through this before, because he had a sorted past. He's like, if they contact you on Friday, again, know that they're about to print it Sunday, which is like the biggest paper. I mean, newspapers are kind of a thing of the past now. We have Google.
Yeah, totally.
Anyways, they contacted on Friday. I said, no, I can't talk to you. Maggie Bishop, who is the director of the facility, said, I can't speak with you. Thank you. I'd love to do this interview. I'm all about it. But they said no, because I am. I'm
Right.
really about it. I want to shine light. I'm like, this, what a great opportunity.
Right.
They print the article. Convicted burglar counsels youth was the headline, front page of the newspaper. I read the article Saturday night. I started crying. I became riddled with anxiety. It's all over. You know, everyone's going to find out. We find out, right? And this is just my head. It's my wife's like, it's okay. You know, it's fine. Like, maybe you're going to help people. I'm like, no, who am I going to help? My career's over. I worked so hard to get here. You know, I was in grad school at the time to get my MSW, and just like I got crippled. Woke up first thing in the morning, 5 a.m., went to the gas station, bought a copy of the paper, said a prayer, read it in the car, and I just started crying with joy.
It was nice.
It was horrible.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was horrible, but I went to work that day because I had a shift on Sunday, and I walked in, and it was a locked facility. I mean, it's a state. It was jail for kids.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and, you know, the man working the bubble said, what are you doing here? Did you not read the paper? And I was like, they could have done a better job of highlighting my attributes. And I just remember in that moment thinking nothing, and I've followed this for 9 years since, nothing is out of reach.
That's exactly right.
You may have to jump through more hoops. You're definitely going to have to overcome limiting beliefs. Right. And so I went through that battle. I testified for the state for a bill that they were trying to pass called Check the Box. And I mean, I clean up well. Right. I present well. I've gotten a suit, and I went down there, and I'm talking, and I'm a grad student. That's how I was pitched to be able to present to the House of Representatives. And I'm down there, and check the boxes. You know, when you apply for a job, you have to check the box whether or not you're a felon. And I said, no, I believe it's stigmatizing. And individuals that are incarcerated, if you believe in your criminal justice system, should be deemed the right to integrate back into society without the stigma attached to them. Like, it's not. If you believe that you're rehabilitating these people, then why do you need to continue to know that they're this? Right. And I did this whole long, and they were all like, you know, really, really, really not paying attention. I could tell they were listening, but like they had more important things to do. And then we were probably 20 minutes into my little rant, and I said, oh yeah, I want to thank you for having me. By the way, my name is Mark Crandall, and I'm a convicted felon. And I want to thank you and the criminal justice system for rehabilitating me. And I got up, and they were all like, stunned. Just white, like, so yeah, I mean, anyone that's listening that has a criminal past, like, you telling yourself that you can't do things is just bullshit.
It's bullshit. And I love that you had that message too, because this is what I talk about all the time. In addiction, for sure, we create an unfortunate set of circumstances for ourselves. It doesn't mean that anything is unattainable. It means that I probably will have to work harder than other people. I will have to jump through more hoops, for sure. But the good news is, being an addicted person also means that I'm stronger than 99% of the general population. So I'm capable of jumping through the extra hoops and working harder. Like, I feel like so many people that have this illness do not get that part. I have this illness because I am a person that is strong enough to handle this illness. And that's huge. Like, that's awesome. But I really wanted to highlight that too, because there are so many people that will let that stuff hold them back, and they don't believe that they can get through or overcome those obstacles. And I knew that you were, I knew you had been to grad school. I knew you were an LMSW. So I wanted to hear how you did it too.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I took it even further. I still have stuff from my past that haunts me. And then I wrote a book, you know, which is titled Embrace Your Past to Win Your Future. And if you can flip your mindset, and it was a selfless plug.
Yeah,
Just
please.
wanted to throw it out. She's like, I didn't know if she's going to take my head off. Edit out. And I wrote the book because I have just walked through so many things that society and myself and mentors and people that I really respect told me that I couldn't do. And I believe wholeheartedly that the only thing that can prevent me from doing the things in this life that I want to is me.
That's exactly right.
And everyone's so trapped in, and you and I were discussing it, right? It's like everyone's so trapped in what others are going to think. Do you want to know what they're going to think? About themselves.
Right.
We're all thinking about ourselves.
Right,
Even people that
right.
are not addicts are thinking about themselves. And we were talking about what is success and all of that. Like outside of comparison, there is no definition for success, right? Because you need somebody
Well, it's kind
else.
of a state of mind.
And I guess to fast forward, I mean, I practiced therapy, working for other people and on my own for like 6 years. And then I broke away from it. And because I wanted to start working with individuals on mindset shifts, and so I'd been obsessively studying positive psychology and the abundance mindset. And I mean, I'm obsessed with Abraham Hicks. And I really believe that any individual's thoughts create their reality, and there's nothing out of reach. I mean, I launched a business, and in 5 months, I had hit $100,000 in 5 months of launching a business. Not that the money means anything,
Right.
but in my head, I was never going to be able to do it.
Right.
You know what? I'm a warrior.
Yes.
You know what? I listened to 2 different books on the airplane on the psychology of selling.
Right.
Right, you know what I mean? Like people are watching,
Yeah,
like
we are the same person. Yeah.
where people are watching like fight comp videos, and
right.
I'm thinking about how to get into the ears of that person that needs to hear me. And that means I need to learn the art of selling, the art of building relationships, the art of writing ad copy, the art of like getting out, right? And so I just become obsessed. And
yeah, me too. So how old were you when you first realized you had a problem with alcohol and drugs?
first,
Like when you had your first thought of, oh gosh, like I don't quite do this right. Not like when you got sober, because for me, those were almost 10 years
Yeah.
apart.
18, I was living at my cousin's house on his couch. The night before, I had taken some Xanax. Was just the devil to me. I mean, it made me do things that
Yeah.
Angela's like, yeah, okay.
Not me, because I've never even taken one.
Oh,
But I have seen guys in my
Yeah.
sober living, like it kind of blows my mind. I've had a couple guys in my sober living that relapsed on Xanax, and I'm like, what in the world happened to you?
You
like,
disappear.
The most crazy, erratic behavior that I never would have expected from that drug.
Yeah, so
And
it
it's
just
legal.
yeah, it does things to me that nothing else has ever done to me. And so the night before this day of like, whoa, what's going on? I had taken some Xanax. I hadn't eaten in probably 2 or 3 days because I didn't have any money. I was unemployable. And I had somehow gotten my hands on some vodka. And so when you drink on a really, really empty stomach and you eat Xanax, and I ended up blacking out, woke up in my underwear in the basement, covered in blood. So I guess I had blacked out, threatened everyone's lives that actually lived in the house. Like, and when I mean lived in the house, I mean they're contributing to the bills and
Right.
and all this stuff. And they were like terrified. And my cousin was like, "Man, you got to get help." Like, and everyone in the house is in like fit the description of addiction, right? Everyone was smoking weed and eating pills and taking ketamine and you name it. And I'm like, "Wow, what did I do?" And he told me, and I was like, and at this time, so here, this is maybe TMI, you can edit it out. My ex-girlfriend had come back from college and we had sex unprotected. She gave me chlamydia. I didn't know what was going on with me. Like, I thought I was going to die. Like, literally. This is the place that I was at. Like, it was burning when I peed.
Yeah.
And I thought so I was near a bottom anyways with just the amount of pain that I was in.
Right.
My bladder hurt. And, my cousin said that to me. I was under the influence of Molly, MDMA at the time, because I decided, that was taken that day. Actually stole it from another kid. And I called my grandfather, and he picked up and he said, hey son, how you doing? And I'm like, not good, Opa, which is German for grandpa. And he said, what are you on? I said, I don't know. He's like, what can I do? And I was like, I need help. I'm going to die. Jen came back. This was
at 18?
Yeah, at 18. It's like, Jen came back from college. I think I'm like HIV positive. Like it burns when I pee. And he's like, slow down. I'm coming to pick you up. And he picked me up, brought me, we got tested, and I found out that they like create this fruit flavored drink that cures what I had. And I was off and running again. But an STD slowed me down for a minute, or an STI, right? Is it an STI?
I have no idea.
Sexually transmitted infection. Yeah, that's what it is. So
it's not a disease anymore?
Well, it's not a disease if you can take a drink and cure it. So it was an infection. I mean, chlamydia is an infection.
Okay. Now I'm with you.
Yeah. So that was my first 18 years old. When did I have the first moment that my life wasn't like other people's? The day that my sister and I were adopted. And I remember going to school, and I was 7 years old, and I was trying to explain to my classmates like why these other people were claiming me. My life was confusing. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on, and I couldn't make sense of it. And, when I found alcohol at the age of 13, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. It tastes gross, but it's pretty cool. And then when I found Jägermeister at the age of 16, everything changed.
So crazy. I wasn't too crazy about Jaeger. I mean, it was okay. Jaeger bombs were fun, but I was Rumplemints.
That sounds horrible.
Well, but it's 100 proof. And it was really, Rumplemints for me was the beginning of the end, truly, because I drank such an exorbitant amount anyway. And then I met Rumplemints. And I didn't start drinking
Literally sounds like a person.
Yeah. It was a big part of my life.
I met Mr. Rumplemints.
I met Rumple, and I didn't drink it instead of something else. I drank it in addition to everything else I drank. So take the amount that I drank enough for probably 5 people on a daily basis, right? And then you throw 100 proof on top of that. And that was really kind of the beginning of my demise. That's when I started getting really sloppy. Like there was no semblance of normalcy at that point, where prior to that, I think because I drank so much for so many years, like my tolerance built up pretty slowly. So I wasn't a sloppy drunk. I wasn't a crying drunk. I wasn't a falling down drunk. Like I was a very controlled, much like I am in my sobriety. I'm very controlled. And I was the same way in my drinking until I met Rumplemints. And I started to get a little sloppy, like right at the end, because it was just so much alcohol. I mean, a regular person would have been dead for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't drink as much as I wanted to, just due to the heroin and benzos that I was also ingesting.
See,
I would nod out.
I'm just a good old-fashioned drunk. I never did drugs. I was never interested in drugs. I smoked pot a few times when I was young, and I took ecstasy one time when I was like 20 years old or something. And this was, I'm 47, so this was a couple years ago. And at that time, there was only one kind of ecstasy. There wasn't all this different stuff and Molly and whatever. It was ecstasy. It was this gigantic pill that looked like an aspirin. There was only one kind. Everybody had the same stuff. And so first, my experience with ecstasy, which was probably really good, right? Like I always say, I feel like I have been divinely guided most of my life. Like now I can look back on all these moments where I feel like I was protected. And this was one of them for sure. So my friends get ecstasy. We're going to take ecstasy and go out. So we all get it. And we're really being taboo. And we take it. And right after I take it, my girlfriend looks at me. She goes, oh, by the way, you can't drink with this because you would get sick, I guess. She's like, you can't drink. And I just looked at her and I was like, why would you give me something that I can't drink? Like, have you met me? So I was already pissed, but I was like, too late now. I've already swallowed it. So I'll just have a night and not drink. And it was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't anything. It was just okay. It definitely was not as much fun as drinking. The problem was when we got home at the end of the night, I was ready to go to sleep. And the ecstasy was not ready to go to sleep. So I was just wide awake. And I got really angry because it kept me up probably a solid 24 hours. I was just awake and I was so mad. But it was the perfect moment because it instilled this thing in me with drugs that like once it's in your system, you have no control. You have no idea what's going to happen to you. And I was not down with that. So I was like, at least with drinking, if I drink too much, I can slow down. I can stop. I can get something to eat. I can drink water. I can not drink for an hour. You know what I mean? Like I can back up on my drunk. But with drugs, once it's in you, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. And I did not want any part of that. So that was my extensive drug history. 24 hours.
I loved it. I just loved I wanted to die. I mean, I wanted to, my first contemplation of taking my life was at 7. That was the first time I thought it. So I was just I definitely
remember having thoughts for sure of like, I don't know how young, but I feel like almost always I had those thoughts of like, I would like to die. Not that I wanted to kill myself, but I would have been thrilled, like if I would have gone to sleep and never woke up again. You know, like I would have been perfectly fine with that. And ultimately, that's what we're doing with our partying, right? Like I was killing myself in the slowest, most painful way possible. But that's really what I was going for was death. And I just always thought like at some point I'm going to go to sleep and not wake up. Like there's no way. I was 97, 98 pounds when I got sober. I'm 130 pounds now. Like I never ate food. I just drank. That's all I did. And it's just crazy to think about it now, but I would have loved to have died. But I never would have taken my own life because I felt like there was this burden of guilt left on family.
That's the same thing I had.
And I couldn't stand that thought. Like I had a niece, I have an older niece now. She's in her 20s and then she was just a kid. And I just absolutely worship her. She's just this incredible, vibrant, now young woman. She's beautiful and funny. And I equally worshiped her when she was young, you know? And I always thought of her and I was like, I would never want to leave that burden on her. I don't want to leave her confused, like wondering, why did I do that? And just the selfishness of it, I guess. Like I just couldn't, I could never do it.
Can I ask you a question on your podcast?
Yeah, of course.
This might rabbit hole for those of you listening. What is your take on this plant medicine movement? The ayahuasca, mushrooms, microdosing?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Okay. I don't know that too many people really know about microdosing outside the crazy entrepreneurship world because I feel like that's where it's really gained popularity in recent years.
But I think your audience has to be seeing this plant medicine movement.
Well, certainly ayahuasca and a little bit, maybe, not a lot, but I think that some of this stuff is probably super valuable for non-addicted brains. I think for me, listen, I got to be honest with you. I would love to microdose mushrooms, right? Because I have anxiety that at times can be debilitating. And I have some depression too that I think actually has gotten a little bit worse as I've gotten older. So I love the thought of doing something that might even me out so I'm not up and down and all of that. I have a junkie brain. So the problem for me is if I do something and I feel an effect, if it makes me feel better, I am not going to do it in a controlled manner. It's just not who I am. Nor does doing it in a controlled manner sound all that fun, right? Especially if it's something I can build up a tolerance to. Naturally, I'm going to do more. And that's just my brain.
I don't even like the word micro.
Right. Like it's almost offensive.
Yeah. And I'm just curious of what your thoughts were on it because it really reminds me of the vape companies and how they were marketing to children, right? And
it's predatory.
So the way that they're marketing this plant medicine, for one, is super disrespectful to the traditions, the religions that actually practice plant medicine. And I say that because I've practiced with some Native Americans that were like, they're disgusted by this whole thing.
Sure.
But it's being, and I also say this because I've seen a few people recently that have gone, two of people that I know in recovery have gone to Peru to do ayahuasca ceremonies and neither of them are sober.
Right.
And
so I've had the same experience with people with ibogaine, right? And I had a guy, this is hysterical to me. I had a guy last year who I worked with, he and his wife for a long time, and he's a hardcore addict. He's a crack addict, super, super wealthy, successful dude. He just likes to smoke some crack every once in a while. And his solution was ibogaine. The year before, his solution was ibogaine. And he literally would look at me and tell me how amazing it was and how well it worked. And I was like, sir, you are smoking crack. It didn't work. Like, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It didn't work. But Angela, I was sober for 3 months. Right, dude? And you can be sober for 3 months without ibogaine. Like, it's not the miracle cure. So I think the first time I heard about microdosing was Tim Ferriss, who's an entrepreneur person who's hardcore. And I think for him, it's probably fantastic. But I don't think he has a junkie brain. I think for people that have some really deep-seated, deep-rooted trauma and stuff like that, some of these things could probably do them a great service. I just don't think it is a proper treatment for an addicted brain because our brains have a different agenda. How's that?
Nailed it. I would have got way more ranty, but you nailed it. It was good.
It's just hard. I mean, I also think that, to create long-term sustainable sobriety, it's not about just quitting drinking or quitting using drugs. There's this whole other plethora of shit that I have to figure out. And some of it is pretty basic, right? We have to develop coping skills because we never did that. We used our substance as our method of coping. So I have to grow up. I have to develop that emotional strength and the ability to troubleshoot my life and get through my life and talk myself off the ledge. Like, there's all these things that go with it. And there is no pill on the planet or plant medicine or ceremony that is going to fix all of that stuff. That's just stuff that I have to do. That's just my work that I have to do. And it's just growing up.
It's funny because I was facilitating a workshop at a float spa in Austin, and the workshop was done and we were sitting around kind of reflecting on what the experiences everyone had, and microdosing came up. And this man, who was a staff member, he got fired from the facility after this event, but he was a staff member at the facility, was trying to tell me that my addiction was all in my brain. I was like, totally accurate, dude. Nailed it. But he didn't understand. He doesn't understand.
Right.
He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. He doesn't know I have an education and da-da-da-da-da. And he then goes on to say that his microdosing tribe is a tribe of warriors and that individuals need to start doing this if they want to get on this spiritual warrior path. And I was like, so what are you telling me? You're telling me that you ingesting a substance to alter your state of mind so that you can achieve a higher level of consciousness through that altered state of mind is the way of the warrior? He's like, yeah, man. I mean, I'm like, okay, dude, for one, you've just identified what it means to get high. Like you just defined it yourself.
Right.
You're getting high. It's not medicine.
Right.
You're getting high.
Right.
And what if I were to tell you that there are people doing that 100% abstinence? Like abstinent. And I don't mean if you're on psych meds, like you're not sober. Right. I'm not getting into that. Like, I'm not into that. This is a different animal. I was like, I've done that sober. I haven't ingested anything. I said, that's the way of the warrior. I said, I believe the path that you're on is the way of cowards and cheats. And he just looked at me. Yeah. I was like, dude, you're trying to fast track.
Well, you're still trying to manipulate. Like, I cannot use any outside thing to change how I feel on the inside. Like, I just have to get inside and do that work. I can't use outside things. It's the same thing using shopping or sex or boys or whatever, gambling, work, right? Like, you can't, that stuff is not going to fill that void. And as much as I love work, it's not going to fill a void. Does it make me happy? Absolutely, because I have really good work.
And there's never, and there's never an end either. So what I was doing, I was cracking you with it earlier. It's like, oh, so what's next? What's next? What's next? Like there's never an end.
There's never an end.
And I put, this unnecessary pressure on myself that I have to get it done right now. I have to get it done right now. But I really don't have to get it done right now. I could get it done tomorrow or next week because there's always going to be the next thing that I have to get done right now. Right.
Yes.
And it just never ends. I wanted to, this is the first time I've discussed this on a podcast. I will be bringing this conversation to my own podcast because it just really irks me.
Yeah.
And now don't get me wrong. There are individuals that are doing this actually as ceremonies. I do have a friend who went to Peru and really, and he's not in recovery. He doesn't have the addiction that I do, and really had a powerful experience with some transformation around trauma.
Yeah.
His intent for going there, nothing to do with getting high.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I think it can be useful. Right. But I just don't know. Again, I have a brain that's a little bit compromised in that particular area. My brain is fucking stellar in every other area. It's just, it has this one little hang up that it doesn't understand moderation. And yeah, I just got to be mindful of that, and I'm not going to do things. I'm not going to set myself up for failure. I guess that's my biggest thing. It's like, I know like for me to do something like that or to even entertain the thought, it's like I'm walking into the lion's den, and nobody would ever walk into the lion's den on purpose.
I just think I think it's absolute shenanigans. And
so this is also why I have never explored taking any medication for anxiety or depression. Certainly for anxiety, because my anxiety can be really bad, but I won't take those meds because there's some of the most addictive medications on the planet. But there are a million studies that have shown exercise is more successful than any antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. So when I hear something like that, that's when I know I have to challenge myself. If I want to feel different, I need to get up off my buns and go do something to support my brain, how it was built to function in firing those natural feel-good things, rather than seeking a substance, a plant medicine, a whatever. Like I have to find alternative methods because, there's just things my brain can't handle. And I feel like when people hear about this stuff, then they start to rationalize and justify. People that aren't super strong and committed to their recovery, that are still wanting to manipulate how they feel rather than do the work. And maybe they're run down and you're feeling tired of feeling tired and you just want it to change. Like they'll hear something like this ayahuasca and they'll start thinking about it and going, maybe I should look at it. Maybe I'll Google that. Maybe I could do that. Maybe that's something that would be beneficial to me. And the truth is, you have to figure out other ways to deal with that stuff. Okay, last question. What is your favorite thing about being a sober person or living a sober life?
It's kind of loaded. I view sobriety or recovery as an introduction to transformation. And the 12 steps in my research that I've conducted, which I already stated on this episode that I'm addicted to self-help, personal development workshops. The 12 steps are the most transformational work that I've ever found. But there's a lot outside there that goes hand in hand with it. I believe that my favorite thing is just access to a never-ending path of transformation. Like there's so much growth that comes, and how most people would be like, oh my God, I need to go back to therapy about this, or I need to take a look at this and bring this to prayer or meditate. Like we get excited about it. I get excited about it. Like yes. I love it.
I get to be whoever I want now. Like I can build myself to be whatever kind of person I want to be. And I definitely never had that option when I was drunk.
And I don't burn myself with cigarettes anymore either.
Oh, that's always good.
Yeah. Or have to run from cops. There's really a lot of cool things.
There's a lot of cool things. Yeah. Well, Mark, thank you so much for doing this with me. This was awesome. And I will put all of your contact information in our show notes as well, and a link to your book. I'm excited to read the book myself. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode too. Have a great day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.